Hey, what's up, people? Bambi Sandy here with a side video. No crazy long introduction or anything. Just, you know, join the Discord or don't. I don't, I don't care. I mean, I do care, but I'm not gonna lose sleep. Link in the description. Don't know what I'm gonna call this video. Also, semi-informal. I did a little bit more work than just typing out bullet points, but I didn't script anything. I didn't write out explicitly what I'm gonna say, so we'll see how this goes. You've got like the informal kind of content, and then you've got like the podcasts and stuff that are kind of on opposite ends of the spectrum. So I gotta flesh out the middle bits. Can't all just be tons of work or no work, and it sounds rough and terrible. Um, so hey, how's it going? Uh, this video, every now and then I want to be able to do just like a little side topic video that doesn't fall into necessarily a series. At some point, I'll start doing like tutorials, I guess, but I'm also not too worried about that sort of content because that's I gotta feel out what the deficit is between like all the teams. If no one's speaking honestly about movement, or I notice the fundamentals are just kind of a negative, and I want to you know fill that deficit. It's a little bit of time that has to happen where I feel that out to begin with. I don't want to come out with 17 tutorial videos that are all just a waste of time because nobody cares about that stuff. Not that I really care about like view counts, but you want at least one person to watch the stuff. So, anyways, this video we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff the community is currently going through, with a actually pretty wide range of subjects and kind of levels of depth to speak on. Mainly, uh, since God, I guess 3 weeks before ARCL season two properly started was when I'm just trying to think. That's a rough guesstimation of time. That's really when I kicked into overdrive and started like really reaching out to people. I think it was like 3 weeks before I'd gotten removed from the ARCL Discord. So that's right around when I really started getting after it and reaching out to people and trying to get prepped. Um, so since then, I've talked to at least 5 teams that have imploded. So that's going to be the main subject of the day. But the main theme of this video is just how the competitive scene, like you as an individual within the scene, should handle yourself and what you should care about and what you should push. Right. That's kind of the big thing. I am just another one of these videos where I've got the ordinary game running in the background. I might die in the background, but that's fine. Primarily audio. So, um, first subject. Actually, sorry, subject number 0. Just get this out of the way. I say it to some degree with all of these videos. What credence you give me, what legitimacy you give me, is really just up to you. I'm not making these videos for really when they come out. It's something that I had to learn the hard way over time with a couple of different games. I need to speak to what I want the scene to be like 2 years from now, not what I want it to be tomorrow. Um, and so, if you really like my position in the community or some of the things that I'm saying, that's cool. Hey, that's great. But I'm not necessarily trying to affect or change you. I know the view count for a lot of these more important videos, um, you know, they won't crack 20 views probably over a couple of years. But I need to orient myself and act appropriately so that way people can look back. If I'm saying all the right things and I'm pushing all the right ideas, I want people to be able to look back and say, like, oh shit, he was talking about all that stuff way back then. So I'm not trying to say the popular thing right now. I'm trying to say the right thing that the scene's going to need to, that speaks to where the scene needs to be a couple of years from now, or what it needs to be chipping away at a couple of years from now. And I would argue that everyone should be trying to operate in a similar manner. How do we keep this thing going, even if the worst case scenario happens, a couple years from now. How pure can we maintain this thing and XYZ? So, if you don't like my cadence or style of speaking or anything like that, that's an easy fix. Just either raise your hand or put out your own content without talking to me by any means. I'm not the gatekeeper. If you like what I'm saying, but you don't like how I'm saying it, then step up to the plate and do something about it. There's all sorts of people that have reached out to me through Discord and said, hey, I'm like one of the few people on my team that watches your content or really enjoys what you're doing. Everyone else kind of just snickers and rolls their eyes. But I really wish that you would do like a little bit more editing or this, that, and the other. And that's a bit of that I would like to change and fix with time. If the content becomes increasingly more legitimate, if more people start watching the stuff, then I'll start editing and stuff. I don't want to say never, but a bit of how the content looks right now just speaks to like what I think is important. Editing really isn't important. Pushing the idea is. Having the balls to say something that'll get you fucking removed from a Discord. That's where I'm at. That's where I put the majority of my time. And two, like, you might feel that way now, but give it a little bit of time and you might find yourself where I'm at, as far as like, the editing not really being all that important, kind of letting just these recordings run and not snipping out little bits in between here and there. How comfortable are you with likes and ums and ands, as see, like that, as sort of filler, you know if you're just trying to not burn out on the subject of the game. So just kind of injecting that here in the beginning, especially as we're coming into the scene is coming into its own. And listen, groups blowing up and tournament organizers going under, as I've seen or heard has happened in the past, right? That's all just par for the course. It's all part of the project. It's all part of the product. No, I don't know what I was trying to say there. um, all part of the process. It's not positive, but it's necessary, right? um, the best environments are shaped through time and pressure. Just don't look at Afghanistan. Anyways, that's a history joke. Persia. Um, so speaking to the most kind of prominent thing that's going on right now directly, group fractures, just general stress when you're in a team or in a community that's running a team, and failure just in general. So uh, I can't explain to you per se why your dad went to the 7-Eleven down the block and never came back. But I can speak to how it's happened, for other people in my experience and talking to other people and conceptually. So why do groups break up? Well, for a game like Reforger or like Squad, again, same exact genre. I would say that Reforger is just a copy of some aspects of Squad, but I don't want to get sued, so I won't say that. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Um, Groups break up for like one of three main reasons. One, you've got people that don't necessarily want to do competitive, but it's something to do. So you take this thing that performed one sort of low speed function, and now it kind of has to change pace and do this high speed function or this really specific thing. Competitive teams are all about, getting signups for event dates and stuff like that. That's not really something that happens with ordinary communities for the most part. That's a big change. And that's like taking, in a lot of cases, someone that, runs half a mile once a month and trying to get them to run a marathon. Like, yeah, technically they could complete the marathon, but it's more likely that they're going to trip on their fucking shoelaces and kind of eat it and not make it, right? So that's one primary reason that I've seen. That's the most common one. The second thing, it's less of a specific reason and it's more of an additional thing that's probably also running in the background. Think about how these communities really start up. Um, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Oftentimes, does a community start from nothing and then the community makes a server, or is it people make a server like a public server for Reforger, and then the community kind of populates itself? A new cool mod comes out. Maybe there's one or two servers that are running like a beta version of WCS or something like that. Something cool. The Star Wars mod for Squad. You make a server that's centric to an idea. Maybe you as an individual have a desire for a particular playstyle or something like that. Well, you have to host that on a server, right? Server spins up, people come to the server, enjoy the experience to varying degrees, decide to stick around. You build a community around that way, right? Um, More often than not, it's that latter thing. You don't even necessarily know what rules, what balancing, how you want to handle the community, who's even available to fill staff roles. Most of the time, 99.9% of the time, the people that are admins in the beginning aren't people that you would actually want to keep as admins. They're just the only people that are around that are willing to do it, that have the time, right? What do you need to be an admin? What do you need to be in a staffing role? You typically just have to have the time and the willpower to do that thing, right? What qualifies for someone to be like in a developer role for a community, like for Armor Reforger? Well, do they know any coding, and are they able to communicate and work with what you want? That doesn't have anything to do with like how they are as a person. Are they a dick? Are they gonna fucking leave the second that you're not thinking about that stuff? So a lot of these communities start in kind of unintentional, ambiguous ways, and then the people that get into positions of power are not people that you want to remain in positions of power. But now that admin's got 17 roles, he's the one guy that knows how to work, the back end for the server or whatever, or he's got his little friend group, and oh, that guy is like just likable enough that people really hop on when they see that he's playing, and it gets really difficult, right? So, um, that's all par for the course. It's all ordinary, and that not only feeds into like what I initially said about groups starting as one thing and then trying to stretch into this special area like competitive, um, but it's its own point of failure as well. And then thirdly, I'd offer a main reason for groups kind of breaking up is just time. Time jades people. I'll never forget. I'm not going to say his name. I'll never forget. I always try to self-insert some story about Squad. But that's kind of where I come from. So sue me. There was a very significant. When I first started playing Squad and was in the competitive scene, I was a fucking nobody. I was garbage at the game. I didn't even have value as someone that could like reliably hit a person 5 feet in front of them in the game. Um, it it and so I was in Korea for that, and then when I got changed, um, when I got PCS'd or when I changed duty stations back to the states, um, my player group changed, so I had to find a new team, and I got pretty kind of lucky by finding a spot on like a mid-tier, upper kind of mid-tier team. And there were some really cool people at the time, and I watched those people jade and become. They'd go from really dedicated, passionate, full of character. They'd stand up for you if someone was talking shit and it wasn't, justified. If someone was saying that you were garbage at the game and you weren't garbage at the game, they'd immediately call you out and put you in check and be like, no, 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 no. There's a bunch of negative stuff that you can say about that guy, but you can't say that, right? Um, and you saw those people just not care. They wouldn't engage. They'd stop standing up for people. So a large aspect to the degradation that you'll see in groups and teams and communities just comes from like disengagement or a complete lack of engagement at all. Someone will get promoted and they won't have good fundamental values. They do this one thing well. That doesn't mean that they do anything else well, and that doesn't mean that they'll be willing to do that one thing well on like an upscaled level, right? Like good gunplay, you would see this in squad a lot. Obviously, I don't intimately interact with the team, so I can't speak to its prevalence in Reforger. But a lot of times, you would have, say your team's got 20 people, you would have, one guy that you just recruited, and he's 3 leagues above everyone else with gunplay. This dude just cracks off on a consistent basis. He's simple in CS:GO, just on another level. Well, just because that guy's 2 leagues above everyone else in gunplay doesn't mean that he can communicate that. Doesn't mean that he's going to teach anyone else that. Doesn't mean that there's going to be literally. Doesn't mean that he's going to do that in the. Just because you find someone that's doing well in a public match doesn't mean that they're going to have the interest or the patience or the ability or the free time to do that in a competitive context. So you'll often find people who will overvalue someone or they'll not overrepresent, but they'll take that to mean that there's all sorts of other hidden talents. And that'll often get really perverse. All 3 of these things happen in groups that fucking blow up, by the way. You'll find that the you'll find that those people will get promoted over people that genuinely deserve it. You know, you'll have absolutely garbage shit tier, stifle creativity, remove people from the group. You'll have absolutely garbage senior leadership and admins and developers and stuff like that. And they'll often vote against or they'll speak ill of people that are threats, people with genuine creativity, people that have energy, people that think outside the box, that go against the grain. Um, and those end up being the worst groups to be in, but it's all kind of like natural. It's just what happens. And to a degree, even if you don't intend as like the founder for a team or a group or a community, sorry, squeaky chair, um, you'll the only real way that you'll kind of know to hedge against these issues and things is am I dying by a hacker? I never see like a bullet come in to kill me or something. Um, you'll see um, God, I totally kind of lost my track. Uh, yeah. Anyways, I said most of what I wanted to say with that. Um, secondly, how does stress affect people at various levels, and what typically gets hidden from ordinary Joes? Uh, you'll often find, even if you're like a high level guy, or if you've been on a team for a while, whether you've been on the team for 5 minutes or whether you've been on the team for 2 years and you're just like not in the shot callers meeting or something, the norm for competitive teams is information gets siloed to a pretty perverse degree. If you're not in the in group, the quote unquote in group, there's like 3 or 4 people. The head guy is going to have, 2 or 3 friends. And even if those people are garbage at the game, he's got rose tinted glasses, so he thinks that like they're the best at this aspect or something like that. Um, and you just won't be told about things because it hasn't been deemed important. The best example that I can give for this, it's a little bit of a silly joke because there's kind of an international audience for these videos. For like the U.S. Army, can't speak to other branches, but for the U.S. Army, even if you're an NCO, you oftentimes won't get told why something is happening or why something is important. Uh, if you're ever given the time of day in that regard to like uh, understanding or being told why something is happening, it'll happen after the thing's happened, and those things are always like not time sensitive. It's always like, hey, we have to unload this shipping container to get ready for this inventory that's coming up. We're going to do it on this day and we're going to split it across like 3 or 4 different days. You know, you won't know anything deeper than that. They'll say like, hey, and we're going to unload it this way just because I like it or just because I said so. Yeah. So even if you're like an E5 or a staff sergeant, if you're E7, your sergeant first class doesn't like you, you just won't. You'll just get told like, hey, show up to the motor pool on this day. We're gonna fucking get ready for this inventory, and that's it. And you that's almost like a human nature thing. It's not a positive. It's a huge negative. It's a joke. Um, and it, so as a Joe, more often than not, I've made a couple of references to it in a few different videos. Sorry, I have the game muted, but I can hear the radio chatter. Um, you'll just wake up to the Discord being gone, or you'll see that you've been removed for something, you know, and no one will reach out to you. And even if they do reach out, they actually won't tell you what you got removed for instance. Same sort of vein there. Um, and you can reach out to a couple of people and ask like, hey, what's going on? And they'll go like, oh yeah, no, the team disintegrated. Like a couple of people at the top decided that they didn't want to do this anymore, so they just deleted the Discord. um, well, that fucking sucks because now what do you do, and what do you learn from that? um, how did what happened? Could have been something that was fixable. You could have just removed probably like the top 5 guys that didn't. If you don't want to do this thing anymore, and that's like the top 3 people that are running the team, fucking put new people in there. Oh no, I don't feel like it. Fuck off. That's typically kind of what that looks like. Stress. There's what we think is a noble thing. uh, if you're in what I call kind of middle management, if you're a squad lead, there's, regardless of what each team's going to call it, everyone's going to call it something different because some people are more milsim than others. And even for the people that like don't really care about tactics, not trying to be rude, but uh, if you're like a GSA or a goblins, and short of like, here's who our drivers are going to be at the beginning of the match this weekend, and these people, we got to have some people go over here and we've got to have some people go over here. But once you get there, like, as long as you're fighting over the relevant areas, we don't fucking care. Formations and fucking setting people up in specific buildings to play the game. Even if you're kind of on that level, inevitably you will come around with enough time to, well, actually, we got to kind of manage it a little bit better. We have 4 people specifically go over to this side of the objective, and then they're going to work their thing, and then we'll have a couple of people over here doing sabotage work and whatever the fuck, right? If you're, so you're all, even for those people, you're going to have an upper management, a middle management, and then the lower tier guys, right? The guys on the lower tier, they're just clicking heads. They're not too worried. They'll go where you tell them to. They're not all that worried about why we're going to a particular area. Your middle management guys are to take like the upper level strategy. They're kind of the sensors. They can localize problems and go, they can kind of feel the pulse of an area and go like, hey, we need more people, to pull away from offense and come back to do defense. Otherwise, we're going to lose the objective. They're the people that make those decisions. And then the upper management typically don't do a goddamn thing in the match. They do all like the how are we going to get to this objective? What routes are we going to drive? What are the timings? What are we thinking about for grand strategy? Are we going to kind of let the other team have the middle objective and then we'll kind of push in after the fact? once we can kind of feel out what they're doing, and how do we make sure that our one helicopter off the rip, doesn't get caught up in this and rocketed right off the beginning, that sort of a stuff. So with those three kind of different levels, people that are watching this video, you're probably never going to find yourself in upper management because that's just never how it's going to work out. You're always going to be middle management. So um, as middle management, which is the most fun, because you're actually working with the guys and playing the game, and you're like not typically doing the politics of running the community or the team or whatever the fuck. You'll think that it's noble to shield the guys below you from all the bullshit that's happening within the team and the community on the top end. Well, you're actually doing all the people under you a disservice, and also there's typically no incentives. Even if you don't mean to do it in a negative way, there's typically already no incentives for you to teach guys how to do your job. You're also shielding and hiding the guys below you from all the stuff that they should be accounting for on the top end, because inevitably they might find themselves in your position, and they need to know the importance of shielding their guys from that stuff. Or how do they handle that? How do they account for that? What do you say yes to? What do you say no to? um, so stress affects middle management way different than it does for the lower tier guys. What do the lower tier guys care if they win a match or lose a match, right? They played the match. That's all that it kind of was. But stress affects upper management way different than it does the lower tier guys. The upper tier kind of management of a team or a community, they give a fuck for whatever reason about legacy and whether we win this match or lose this match. Upper tier management cares about, like, we get some mercs from another team, that already dropped out. They've got really good players. We replace some of our guys with them, so there's a better chance we'll win this. And that's where that uh, typically happens. That's that realm. You can tell that I fucking hate that shit, but stress does affect people differently at various levels. So if you're a lower tier guy and you're like, what the fuck? Where's the Discord? To a degree, understand that, like, the experience was just different at a different level. And then finally, how do you identify failure around you and within yourself? I'm going to get into this with the next subject, but you need to see yourself almost like an actor without a manager, or like what do they call those? Like a rep, or I can't fucking think of it. An agent, right? You need to be your own best advocate, or think of yourself as like a sports professional. You know, you shore up your own deficiencies. It's not your fucking. It's not your coach's job to square away like core deficiencies in you. It's your coach's job to work with what you are, maybe a little bit of fine tuning, to work better with other people and stuff. But like, if you can't kick the fucking ball, that's you. Your coach isn't. That's not his job, right? Um, so in that same sort of spirit, your best learning tool is other people. It's not you. If you're only ever looking at you and what you have going on, you can be the most squared away guy on your team, and the team will still implode, and people will fall out and leave. And but if you're only ever just looking at you, you'll never get better. You might be 5 skill levels above where everyone else on your team is, but you're gonna fucking stay there, and people will probably pass you if you just stay there, if you just stay stagnant. And that sucks. Both from the perspective of people that want to play with you, and then kind of looking back oftentimes. You have to get good at self-deprecation. You have to think critically about, what do you suck at? What, because no one's going to be honest with you. No one. your best friend in this space won't won't be completely honest with you. Um, you have to get good at feeling that out over time. Am I a dick? I noticed that, like, everyone. This is true, by the way. This is what I used to be. God, I noticed that, like, when these three or four people hop into Discord, either by themselves or as a group, everyone comes out of the woodwork to like play all of a sudden. People move stuff around, Well, I could go to Home Depot and like work on some gardening stuff in the backyard, but you see that one guy's on and you're like, nah, I'm just going to relax today and play games, right? I notice that no one does that when I hop on. No one does that when I'm around. It almost actually seems like people jump off when I hop on and I start speaking. Maybe do I need to like curb my negativity a little bit? What's feeding into that? Um, you're your best tool for that. Uh, and then uh, your best thing is seeing it in people around you. Not only do you need to be able to see what you need to work on and what you're okay at within yourself, you need to be able to see that in the people that are around you, and the spaces that are around you, and the teams that are around you. Um, you know, just because if you're only ever focused, if I'm worried about getting in a car accident and I'm only ever focused on um, me and my car and my 9 to 5, I'm going to be a worse driver than if, here and there, I probably wouldn't obsess over it, but like I'll watch some YouTube videos of people getting into accidents and I'll go like, oh shit, that guy just like didn't fucking signal or like assumed that, the next lane over was going slower than it was. I see that. I got that. God, I never really thought about that. I've been in some like close instances like that before. I got it. um, you're going to be a better driver if you do stuff like that. You know, look at other teams that have imploded. Look at other people, that are, on paper really great at the game, but no one wants to be in a fucking room with them. No one wants to talk to them. They're a dick. Think about why that's an issue, why that might be affecting them. Can't, are they like too far gone? Can you work with that person, etc. Right? Um, Always be trying to improve yourself, otherwise the scene as a collective isn't gonna fucking improve. Second subject. How do you avoid burnout and maintain sanity in the space? And then, like I had said, well, the last thing, manage your own talent. Be your best advocate, right? If you notice, like I really don't play the game all that often right now. They haven't really updated anything. It's fucking stale. It's boring. I don't need to spend basically any time with the game to be good at the gunplay. It's none of it's a perishable skill. It's a joke. But if Ironbeard comes out with the escalation update and all of a sudden, um, sorry, make sure no one's dying. If Ironbeard comes out with the next escalation update and it's got all those tools for fine tuning all that stuff, yeah, I'm gonna find some fucking escalation servers to play on. But if I'm burnt out on the game, just don't play the game. Don't further it. Sprinkle in some other games there. Watch some YouTube. Spend some time with the family. Spend some time with your dog. That's my favorite thing. Touch grass. Do some gardening. Whatever. Just don't engage with it. If you don't like aspects of the community, don't engage with aspects of the community. Which sounds simple, but just be honest. You're not gonna do it. Chase challenge and improvement. Pair yourself with someone who can call you on your garbage. This is fucking huge. Huge. Try to find someone that you gel with pretty well. If you have the opportunity, find someone who's better than you. Find someone who's more charismatic. Find someone who's calmer. Find someone who, if you're a little toxic, if you're a little on the younger side and you say like some weird shit, find someone that'll like temper you. Um, and then try to play with them all the time. Reach out to them. Be like, hey, you gonna play the game today? Yada yada yada. I get kicked for fucking being AFK. Does dying not count? Um, yeah, that's a fucking grade A level recommendation. You're not really always going to have the opportunity for that. If you're on a team and there's no one that's kind of around to do that, first of all, I would evaluate whether you want to be on that team, and then find someone from another team. You know, you don't have to be in the same team. Uh, and then lastly, I would say engage in the community. I don't have to. I enjoy the community aspect of this and talking to people and debating and talking philosophically about ideas and how things can be better and stuff. I don't really fucking care about like being in the game anymore. So, you know, I still engage with the community. I can go a week without playing the game and I'll check in on my discords and stuff like that, right? Um, if you enjoy the concept of competitive as a hobby, but you don't quite like where it's at right now, engage in the aspects of the community that you do enjoy or work to better things or change things. But don't like completely drop out of the community. Yeah, I really don't like the state of where this thing is, so I'm just going to leave. Well, fuck. Is the community like really in that bad of a situation? Whoa, hey, I don't know about that, man. Um, you pick a person from another team or community that you can bounce ideas off of. That's my favorite thing. Talk to Ironbeard all the fucking time. He's not even really in the competitive community, and I don't know why he returns my messages. But he's a cool fucking resource. Like, just someone that doesn't speak the same way. It doesn't necessarily think about the same things. Talk to people from different teams. You know, see, every now and then you'll have a conversation that just clicks in your mind, and you're like, oh, shit, yeah, all right. That'll make you a better person and better at your role in the game. Um, Learn from people, watch match recordings. You know, you can you can separate yourself from the bits with this thing that you don't like without completely like siloing yourself away. Next subject, you know, you've either been removed from a team for whatever reason. Hi, baby. Sorry, big German Shepherd. Did you drink some water? Yeah. Um, her fan mode hasn't kicked in yet. She's not panting like crazy. I live in California, so she steps outside for like 3 seconds and she starts dying. Um, you've been either removed from a team or you find that your team is disintegrated, or you know you're part of a community that's decided, you know, hey, we're not going to do this competitive thing anymore, it's too much work, and you're like the one person that really cared about it, or you know, whatever situation you're in. Do you find a new team or do you make a new team? The first thing that I would offer is just research. Baseline data is everything. Everything. Um, you know, be honest with yourself. Who do you have with you? Who actually agrees with you? Who's just a yes man? You know, do how much experience do you have? Does that really balance like what it's going to take to start a new team? What size team are you shooting for? Um, Research. And then what value are you placing on yourself? And just try to be honest if it's too high. Try to make it empirical data, right? If Armory Forger is my first FPS game, and this is my second month in competitive, and the team that I've joined has either removed me or blew up, and we never played a single match. You're probably not in a good place to make a team. You should probably get some more experience. Um, and then two, like, what value do you bring to the table? What leadership experience do you have? Do you have none? in the space, there are all sorts of people that have never been in a leadership role in a competitive context, and they make better leaders than the people that have 3,000 hours in the game and have. So I'm not saying that that's like the big indicator, but just think about that yourself and go like, I haven't really managed people before. I don't know what it's like to try to get signups for this event on Saturday. Um, and if you're not comfortable with kind of that answer, there's no shame in like, all right, well, I'll put myself on another team. You should see this as like collective. Try it. I said earlier, think about yourself in like a sports context. Um, to some degree, should probably actually see yourself as like a carpenter. You know, you start off as like an apprentice, and you're kind of learning your way on how to do stuff. You work a bunch of jobs. Um, and then the more jobs that you work, you'll see different things, you'll grow, you'll get better at doing certain functions or tasks or in different environments, and then inevitably you'll have enough knowledge to where you can just freelance do everything yourself. You might try to make your own business that way. You'll teach, other people how to, do what you know how to do and XYZ. But you probably shouldn't do that if, you get fired as an apprentice and you just know how to do like two things on a job site, you know. Um, if you've got 2 hours at being a drywaller, are you really going to start a drywall business? Treat it the same way, right? Um, who's supporting you? I'd kind of touched on it earlier, but like, are you just solo? That should go into the math equation as well. If I left my old team with 3 or 4 guys that, once the Discord got deleted, immediately reached out to me. If I was a squad lead and all of the guys that I was in charge of reach out and they're like, hey man, where are you going? Because I want to go there, right? Changes a little bit of what you're working with. You can be a little bit more confident, all right? Especially in a space where 10v10s are normal, right? Finding 5 other additional people, it's pretty fucking easy, right? And then in general, um, or sorry, lastly, and then I'll touch on it. Be realistic about how large of a bite you're looking to take. You know, Reforger has 3 different sort of realms to address if you're thinking about making a competitive team, right? There's the team itself, which is what you need to participate in tournaments and scrimmages. There's, okay, well, where's home for you? Because we got to play the game. Are we making our own public server, or are we playing on someone else's server? What does that look like? You know, and then uh, if we're making our own server, then that means that we have to have a community to service that server that's separate from the competitive team. So, are you in a position where you can manage any of that? No, you don't want to manage any of that, then you should join someone else's team. If you're only in a position where you can manage the team thing, that's cool. Don't start a server. Just hop around between like 3 or 4 different servers with your group of guys, right? That's cool. That's doable. Um, maybe you don't like the experiences that are hosted anywhere else and you do want to do your own thing. Well, do some research into what it's going to take. What server host are we going through? Do we even have people that are interested in being like admin roles for an ordinary community context, stuff like that? Just really sit with it and think about that stuff. And there's value in both things. If you find that you constantly disagree with the decisions, the process, uh, the factors that go into being on someone else's team, you find that other people always, cut corners and don't do things the right way and take the easy way out all the time, right? If you get removed from a lot of teams or communities because you're like the one outspoken voice and no one else really sees the value in that and stuff like that, then making your own project, making your own team might seem super appealing. There's definite, absolute empirical value in making your own thing and pushing your own, you know, characteristics and how you want to run things. Uh, but there's also definitely value in, going from team to team to team. If you join a team, you're with them for 4 months, and then it's really obvious that, like, hey, I'm cool fulfilling a function as a Joe or whatever until you get to know me, but like what's engaging to me is sort of like the management side of things. I want to be a squad lead, or I want to provide people an opportunity to have a good experience, or the kind of experience that I wanted when I was new to the game. And you're not really getting that. You're not getting that opportunity. Jump to another team and just communicate that to your next team, right? Hey, I was on this past team. Uh, I'm cool with being a follower, but what I'm really looking for is this. And then, you know, pull lessons as you go. And then ultimately, at some point, you'll either find a team that treats you how you want to be treated, or you'll make your own thing. You'll have enough experience to justify that. And then ending this video off, just some random tips for anyone kind of moving around in space. Don't ever go back to something that you got removed from. A team, a Discord, a community, a tournament organizer. I'll never go back to ARCL. Because even if you did something wrong, even if you were toxic, you talked to people the wrong way, you were disrespectful, if didn't listen during a practice, if you didn't work well with others, if you, whatever, even if you were the problem, and a couple years later, you've, looked inside yourself and changed some things, you're calmer now, medication changed or something like that, don't ever go back. Don't ever go back. You can look back fondly on that and go like, I had some really cool opportunities there and some good times, and I probably should have been a little bit more grateful. Keep it moving forward to something different, right? I'm not going to spend 30 minutes about why that's a good idea. Just trust me. Don't do it. Don't do it. It's never worthwhile. And you almost always find yourself being treated worse than you deserve, differently than you deserve. That thing will hang over you like a fucking cloud. I'll never go back to the ARCL Discord because a little bit of a different set of reasons, I suppose, more specific, because I came in with more of a refined, idea and concept and expectation that I was going to get removed, right? Because I'm doing this journalism thing. But like, for instance, just put my cards on the table for the subject and show kind of where I'm coming from. Um, I'll never go back to the ARCL Discord, even though I've supposedly been unbanned, because I didn't get banned for breaking the rules. I never got a warning, not once, and they removed me, right? Hey, we promise we won't ban you again. Did you change any of the rules or how you operated? No. Okay, so why would I come back? Eh, just don't do it. Don't do it. It does not work out. Um, and if people try to reach out to you, if you get removed from a team and then someone reaches out and says like, hey, the guys that really didn't like you, they got removed or they left or whatever, we want you to come back because we think you'd be like a good integral part of like the experience we're trying to build. Don't fucking do it either. Don't do it. Don't buy that shit. Because enough people, even if the quote unquote people that had actually had the issue with you left, there's 7 other people that remember that you got removed for a thing. That cloud will still hover over you, and it'll overshadow any positives that you offer. So don't do it. Secondly, don't confuse popularity and reason or logic, right? Just because everything's done a certain way doesn't mean it's the best way to do a thing. Um, just because everyone's doing something doesn't mean that you need to do it, doesn't mean that your team needs to do it, doesn't mean, if everyone has a particular outlook on something wrong with the game or a feature or a function or balancing or A person doesn't mean that it's right. And the best option that I would offer from that, coming off of the back of the comment about, don't ever go back to a project that you got removed from, regardless of what the reason was. Because people do change over time. The flip side of that is think about that when you start a team, or if you're in a leadership position, or you're in a position to make yes or no votes on whether someone gets promoted or can do this thing or whatever. Um, People will absolutely poison the well, right? You will hear about a guy long before you see him, and it's really likely that none of what you've heard about that guy is real or a problem. Um, that's just how it is, what it is. Is that a U.S. guy? Nope, never mind. Um, so just because everyone's doing something or nobody's doing a thing doesn't mean that there's necessarily a good reason or a reason at all for that. So just keep that in mind. Um, Third, never stop practicing. This doesn't mean like never stop scrimmaging or never stop playing the game. Like I said before, I don't really fucking play the game all that consistently right now because none of the aspects of the game are perishable. They don't do that many updates to anything, right? Um, what I mean is try to think about the game every now and then. Try to think about something that your stance is on a particular subject. That's how I started with originally I just had an outright hatred of the rocket helicopters. I just thought about it more and more and more over time as I kept playing the game. I'm like, well, is it really just the lack of skill that goes into it oftentimes, or is it the lack of skill that's required? There's actually no floor. The flying is really easy. You don't have to have basically any map knowledge. You can fucking zoom in while you're flying at 150 miles an hour. There's no like screen blurring, right, or tunnel vision. So you have perfect vision from any height. My position on that used to be based in stuff that was actually pretty fallible, kind of coming from the wrong place. And then I thought about it a little more and I'm like, well, is that really how I feel about that? Or is that really where I'm coming from? What's my issue with like the amount of rockets? Is it really the amount of rockets or is it the effect that each rocket has and then that you get so many of them? I'm like, okay. So always be kind of thinking about that stuff. Don't stop researching either. If you're on a team, talk to other people from other teams because your thing could fucking end. Um, people don't People aren't honest with each other. People won't give you the fucking time of day. People won't tell you that you need to improve in certain areas or certain ways. Um, Typically the only reason that the only way that you'll know that your leadership is really fucking petty and dumb is you'll be in the room while they're talking about someone else. They're never going to talk about you. They'll wait until you're gone and then they'll talk about you in the same way, right? Always assume that your time is fucking measured, right? So if I'm on a team and I really enjoy my position and people supposedly enjoy playing with me, talk to two or three different other teams. You should, in general, be talking to other people to understand like how they're doing, how they're handling a problem, how they're working on something. Um, but a big part of that should be like tomorrow you could find yourself without a team. You know, what are your references? What are your opportunities from that point on? Well, if you've been talking to the people that your team, your now ex team scrimmaged all the time, and they know that you know what the fuck you're talking about, then the swap is really easy. And then you might not have to spend time as a Joe. If I want to spend all my time in like decision making roles and like playing as the squad lead and being the guy that has to make split second decisions and stuff like that, I eat away at a bunch of the time and like the vetting process in this new team if people already know me, so always kind of keep that stuff in mind. And then lastly, learn from your surroundings. Big piece of that, just a call back to like look at other teams, talk to other people, see why things are happening over there, compare that to why things are happening over here with your thing. The best example that I could give where I'm standing right now is like, um, I I want to be a tournament organizer in 2027. You know, if I want to do that, I don't completely disengage from what ARCL is doing. You know, I talk to some of the ARCL people that are willing to talk back to me in an honest fashion or a semi-honest fashion, and I try to keep up with like rule changes. I fail at that front, but like, you know, I try to keep up with like how they're doing things and why they're doing things and stuff like that, so that way I can use that to augment maybe something that I wasn't thinking about down the line, or so that way I can go, you know, that's a fucking, as like a thinking exercise, like, you know, that's a terrible idea, and here's exactly why it's a terrible idea. I'm not all that worried about that because I'm not going to implement um, stuff like that. So you should be doing that not only as an individual player, but with respect to whatever your role is, right? Um, if you're a squad lead, keep up with other squad leads and think about like if an update comes out with the game, how does that affect how you do what you do? If you're an anti-tank guy and you really enjoy hitting long distance shots and stuff like that, try to keep up with other people that do it. And you know, you might find that you're the only person that gives a damn about your particular role in that fashion, but that's good to know too, you know? So you know what to value yourself on. So if you have to jump ship and go to another team or something like that, you can accurately say like, hey, listen, I'm the only person that you could possibly recruit for this specific role that, you know, is in the top 10 in globally. You know, obviously there's no role requirements right now, but that's kind of the best example that I could give for that. um, so yeah, bit of an off-topic video, but definitely necessary. And I hope that everyone's kind of managing their time and their space well. I've obviously I reach out to individual people when they message me or when I hear about something. So I've talked to basically all of the people that now find themselves without a home from a competitive or a community context. But um, you know, if anyone else finds either down the road they stumble across this video and they're in the, you know, the shoe fits, they're in that particular situation, or if people are there now, um, know that it's not the end. Know that it makes you a better person to be on a multitude of teams and a multitude of situations, interacting with different people. Know that you're probably going to be a better player and have better prompts than someone that stays on the same team for the next 5 years. Just always be challenging yourself and kind of iterating. You know, the you that you are 2 years from now should be markedly better than you right now. So thanks for watching. Thanks for giving me the time today. You know, I see what I proclaim to represent for the community is a guide. You know, I'm a Sherpa to a degree. You know, I want to be able to point out things that people might think are a big deal and go like, don't worry about it. Just keep it moving. You know, and I've tried to do that to the best of my degree, or to the best that I can so far, and I think I'm doing a good job. But just always keep in mind with whatever you're doing. I think about it all the time. You aren't the thing, you're servicing the thing. If you're a really good anti-tank guy, you aren't God. You are but a man. You service your aspect of the game, right? If you leave the game, people aren't going to stop using RPGs. So the what you should aspire to is to represent what you do well, like being a carpenter, right? You speak well to the trade. And that's kind of what I think that I'm doing. I'm trying to show people like, hey, this isn't a big deal. This happens all the time. You know, here's how you can manage that. Just you don't have to leave the game or leave the competitive community for the game. This is where that's going to probably end up. If anyone, I know I should probably say this at the beginning of the video instead of the end of the video, but if anyone's in a particular situation or anyone wants to talk about like some weird question that they have, or they feel some type of way about something, they don't know how to think about something, if you're a player that's like a really good, I see you, Omni Snaps. Um, if you're a particularly good player amongst not so great players and you want to kind of hear, want some advice, want to know how to handle that, this is why I say with every video, join the Discord. I want to have genuine conversations with people. If I'm wrong on a subject, I need the people around me to indicate that I'm wrong. I want that to come out through conversation. I'm wrong about stuff absolutely all the time. An update will come out for the game, and I think that it affects A, B, and C, but it actually affects only C, D, and G. You know, um, so please, please join the Discord, be part of the conversation. Even if you're kind of feeling out, how much you want to type in there, how often you want to interact, that's cool. Um, but that's kind of what I would offer for that. Let's again, we probably can't affect where the scene is at this year, tomorrow, next month, December, but we can make the competitive community next year, 2 years from now, fantastic if we speak honestly and really try to address things for the better. So thank you for watching the content and spiritually being part of that process.